You know what frightens folks our age most? It ain't death, it ain't sickness, it's the silence, the kind that settles into your bones after the kids stop calling, after the funeral guests take their casseroles home, after your hands once, so steady, so needed, have nothing left to hold. Rebecca Sterling knew that silence, lived in it for 5 years. Coffee, for one, every morning. The smell of Folgers filling an empty kitchen. Her husband's chair gathering dust across the table. But here's what nobody tells you about hitting rock bottom sometimes. Salvation doesn't knock politely at your door. Sometimes it collapses at your gate bloody, broken, barely breathing. 2 German shepherds. 90 pounds of scar tissue and shattered trust. She could have called animal control. Should have. Instead, she stepped out of her truck on that dusty Nevada afternoon and made a choice that would cost her everything she thought she knew about healing. This is not my story, but it might be yours. 150 words. Before we continue, please leave a like and subscribe. Let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. 4:12 a.m. Rebecca's eyes opened before the alarm. They always did. 35 years of 5 a.m. surgical rounds had rewired something deep in her bones, some internal clock that refused to retire even when she had. She lay still, ceiling fan clicking overhead. Third click louder than the others. She'd been meaning to fix that for 18 months. Her feet found the cold hardwood. Left knee popped on the way up. 68 years of gravity winning its slow war. Kitchen. The coffee maker gurgled same Folgers she'd been buying for 40 years. Harold used to tease her about it. Life's too short for bad coffee. Beck. She never switched brands. The smell filled the kitchen now. Rich and familiar. The only warmth in the house. She turned on the radio. KNPR out of Las Vegas. The morning host's voice hummed low while she poured one cup. The large filters sat unopened in the pantry. She'd stopped buying them after Harold. No point brewing a full pot for hands that would never wrap around the second mug. His chair sat at the breakfast table. Oak, worn smooth on the armrests where his elbows had rested every morning for 41 years. She walked around it. Always around, never moved it, never sat in it, outside. A mockingbird started up. Same bird, same fence post. Every morning since spring. Harold would have named it by now, given it a whole personality. She just listened. Upstairs. Second door on the left closed. Had been for 3 years. Maggie dusted in there once a month. Rebecca paid her extra for it. Easier than opening that door herself. Easier than smelling whatever remained of Daniel in the fabric. The carpet, the air. Her phone rang. Sunday? Must be Catherine. Hi. Mom. Catherine. How are you? Fine. 12 minutes. Questions about the grandchildren she'd seen twice in 3 years. Updates about Mark's job she couldn't remember. Then, okay, Mom, talk next week. The line went dead. Rebecca poured cold coffee into the sink, watched it spiral down the drain. The radio played an old Johnny Cash song. She turned it off. Evening. The sun bled orange across the Nevada hills. Rebecca walked her property line habit without purpose, movement without destination. She stopped at the front gate. Gravel road stretched into brown nothing. Empty. She turned back toward the house, somewhere past the hills. Something was moving. 2 shapes. Pushing forward on legs that shouldn't still be working. Tomorrow, they would reach the gate. 400 words. Day 15. Late afternoon. Rebecca's truck kicked dust on the gravel road. 40 minutes to town. 40 minutes back. Weekly ritual. Human contact prescribed like medicine, her own prescription to herself. The grocery bags sat in the passenger seat. Bread, milk, The pork chops, Maggie said, were on sale at Safeway. Same list every week, same route, same silence, except for the country station crackling through speakers that needed replacing. The gate appeared ahead. Something wrong. She eased off the gas, squinted through the windshield. Heat shimmered off the gravel, bending the air. Two shapes on the ground. Large, dark. Still, Coyote's deer carcass the vultures hadn't found yet. The truck rolled closer. 20 feet. 15. German shepherds, both down. One draped across the other legs, tangled. Muzzle pressed into the second dog's neck. Even unconscious. Protecting. Rebecca shifted into park, engine idling. Her hand stayed on the gear stick. The air conditioning hummed outside. The Nevada heat pressed against the windows like something wanting in. Drive around. Call someone. This isn't yours. She cut the engine, stepped out. The heat hit first. Dry, heavy, the smell of sun-baked dust and something else copper. Faint, but there. Blood somewhere. Old blood. Gravel crunched under her boots. 10 feet away. She stopped. Her surgeon's brain activated automatic. Clinical, triage mode. Ribs, visible through the skin. She could count them. 12 pairs, prominent as piano keys beneath dull. Patchy fur. Dehydration. Severe. Mucous membranes would be tacky. Gums pale. Days without water. Maybe longer. Burns. White patches on their backs where fur refused to grow. Old damage. Months healed. The kind that came from sustained heat. Deliberate heat. A cattle prod. Held too long. Necks. Raw rings circling their throats. Skin rubbed to meat. Then scarred over. Then rubbed raw again. Layers of damage like tree rings marking years of drought. The larger dog's eyes were open, watching her, not pleading, not hoping, just watching. The way you watch something you know will hurt you. The way you stop expecting anything different. A horsefly buzzed past Rebecca's ear. She didn't swat it. Her hand moved toward her pocket. Phone. Animal control? Let someone else handle this. The second dog lifted his head. Muscles trembled with the effort, barely an inch off the ground. His eyes found hers. Brown, deep, empty in a way that made her stomach clench. He wasn't begging. He was just looking. 3 seconds. Daniel. Last time she saw him, standing in her doorway, 20 pounds underweight, track marks visible when his sleeve slipped up. Mom, I'm trying. She'd picked up the phone, called the rehab facility, talked to the intake coordinator while her son stood there, waiting for her to look at him. She never did. 3 seconds. Rebecca's thumb hovered over the screen. The dog's head dropped back to the gravel, too weak to hold it up anymore. She put the phone in her pocket. Her truck bed held a moving blanket, old, stained, kept for furniture runs she never made anymore. She pulled it out, spread it across the hot metal, back to the dogs. The larger one growled, weak, barely a vibration in his throat. Warning, not threat. I know, Rebecca said. Her voice sounded strange out here, small against the desert. I know. She crouched, extended her hand, palm up, the way her daddy taught her with horses 60 years ago on a farm in Wyoming that didn't exist anymore. The growling stopped. She slid her hands under the dog's body. Lifted. Light, too light. 70 pounds when he should have been 90. Bones shifting under her palms like something broken and badly reassembled. She placed him on the blanket, went back for the second one. This one didn't growl, didn't move. Eyes closed now, chest rising and falling in shallow, uneven intervals. She lifted him. Lighter still. Tailgate closed. Rebecca pulled out her phone. Different number this time. "Maggie, I need you at the house. Now." "What's wrong?" She looked at the two shapes in her truck bed. Broken things that should have died miles ago. Things that kept moving anyway. "Just come." She climbed into the driver's seat, turned the key. The air conditioning blasted her face. Her hands were shaking. In the rearview mirror, the larger dog's eyes were open again, watching her. 600 words. Day 15. Evening. Dr. Bill Hartley had been a veterinarian for 43 years. He'd seen neglect, abuse, cruelty in forms that made him stop believing in human decency somewhere around year 20. He knelt beside the dogs on Rebecca's living room floor, didn't speak. His hands moved gentle, methodical over ribs, joints, necks, the white patches on their backs. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked. 10 minutes passed. Rebecca stood by the doorway, arms crossed. The smell of rubbing alcohol and old leather from Bill's medical bag filled the room. Maggie hovered in the kitchen, making coffee nobody asked for. Bill sat back on his heels, pulled off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. "Cattle prod," he said. "Someone used a cattle prod on them, repeatedly. The burn patterns are consistent, same width, same depth, same spacing. This wasn't some drunk fool losing his temper. This was systematic." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "How long?" "Months, maybe their whole lives." He lifted the larger dog's lip, checked the gums, pale pink, almost white. "These chain marks aren't from being tied up. They're from being yanked. Odd, over and over. Whoever did this wanted them terrified of people. Trained them to expect pain. Can they recover physically? Probably. With time, nutrition, antibiotics for the infections." Bill closed his medical bag. The clasp clicked loud in the quiet room. But Rebecca, these dogs were trained to fear. Every time they showed friendliness, someone hurt them. "That's not something I can fix with a pill." "What are you saying?" "Bill, I'm saying you could do everything right for the next year and they might never let you touch them without flinching." He stood, knees popping. Same sound hers made every morning. "Some damage doesn't heal. You need to understand that going in, what do they need? Right now, medically?" He handed her a list: IV fluids, antibiotics, soft food, clean bedding, and patience, he added. "More than you've probably got." Day 16. Rebecca converted the guest room. Old blankets layered on the floor, the quilts her mother had made 40 years ago, too worn for company but too precious to throw away. Water bowls in the corner, food bowls 3 feet from where the dogs lay. She placed the food down, stepped back. 15 feet. The larger dog, she'd started calling him Shadow in her head, growled. Low, continuous, a motor running on fumes. She left the room, closed the door. From the hallway, she heard movement, claws on hardwood, the wet sound of kibble being eaten. Only when she was gone. Day 17. Kitchen. Evening. Maggie set down the dish towel. The smell of pot roast lingered from supper. Neither of them had eaten much. "Mrs. Sterling, can I say something?" "You will, anyway. These dogs, they're not a surgery. You can't schedule their recovery. Check off boxes like you're prepping an operating room. I've watched you for 5 years. You organize everything, control everything. That's how you survived losing Mr. Sterling. Losing Daniel." Maggie's voice softened. "But you can't control this. These animals have to come to you. You can't make them." Rebecca's hands pressed flat against the counter, knuckles whitening. "Is that all?" "Yes, ma'am." Day 17. 11:47 p.m. Rebecca couldn't sleep. She went downstairs, sat on the floor outside the guest room door, back against the wall, knees drawn up. She picked up the book she'd grabbed from the shelf. The Old Man and the Sea. She'd read it to Daniel when he was 12, last book they'd finished together before he decided he was too old for such things. She started reading. Quiet, not to the dogs, not to anyone. He was an old man who fished alone in a skiff in the Gulf Stream, and he had gone 84 days now without taking a fish. Silence from inside the room. She kept reading, Hemingway's spare sentences filling the dark hallway, her voice steady, present, a sound, faint, claws shifting on hardwood. She didn't stop, didn't look up. The old man was thin and gaunt with deep wrinkles in the back of his neck. When she finally looked up, gray light filtered through the hallway window. Morning. Her neck ached. Her back screamed. Something wet touched her fingers. She looked down, Shadow's nose, pushed through the crack under the door, sniffing her hand. Not trusting, not friendly, just checking. Making sure she was still there. 700 words. Day 21. Week 3. Rebecca developed a system. Food bowl down. Retreat 15 feet. Sit. Wait. She timed it on her wristwatch the Timex Herald had given her for their 30th anniversary. Surgical precision applied to dog feeding. Week 1. Neither dog ate while she was in the room. She'd leave. Close the door, press her ear against the wood, wait for the sound of kibble crunching. Only then would she breathe. Week 2. She stayed at 15 feet. Storm ate, slow, cautious, eyes never leaving her face. Shadow waited behind his brother until Storm finished, then cleaned whatever scraps remained. Week 3. 12 feet. Storm's head dipped to the bowl within 30 seconds. Shadow held position, watching, calculating. Week 4. Storm at 10 feet. Shadow still needed 15. Rebecca didn't push. Day 45. The UPS truck came on Tuesdays. Rebecca knew this. Had known it for 18 months. Somehow, she forgot to tell Maggie to warn the driver about the dogs. The truck pulled up the gravel drive, engine rumbling, then bang, backfire, sharp as a rifle shot. Rebecca was in the kitchen, listening to Paul Harvey on the radio. When the crash came, glass shattering, wood splintering. A sound she'd never heard from any creature high. Broken. Endless. She ran. The guest room door hung crooked on its hinges. Shadow had thrown himself against it. Blood smeared the frame where his shoulder had connected. He stood in the corner now, body pressed into the wall, legs shaking so hard she could see the tremors from the doorway. Storm howled. Not barking. Howling. The sound of something reliving its worst memory. Rebecca stepped forward. Shadow's lips pulled back. Teeth bared. Not aggression. Terror. She stopped. Okay, she said. Quiet. Okay. She sat down on the floor, right there in the doorway, didn't move, didn't speak. Storm's howling dropped to a whine. Then to silence. Shadow's legs gave out. He slid down the wall, collapsed onto his side, chest heaving. 2 hours. Rebecca didn't move. Her back ached. Her hip complained. She stayed. 3 weeks of progress, gone. That night. Maggie found her on the back porch. Bottle of wine open, glass untouched. The smell of sage and dust drifted in from the desert. Somewhere out past the fence line, a coyote yipped. Rough day. I should have called animal control. Rebecca's voice was flat. Back at the gate? Should have let them handle it. But you didn't. I don't know what I'm doing. I fixed hearts for 35 years, arteries, valves, things with clear problems and clear solutions. She stared at the dark hills. This isn't fixable. Maggie sat down on the step beside her. The wood creaked under their weight. Maybe that's the point. Rebecca didn't answer. She picked up the wine bottle, poured it into the rosemary bushes Harold had planted their first summer here. Red, splashing against dry earth. She went inside. Day 60. Storm's shoulder wound needed fresh bandaging. Dr. Hartley had shown her the technique clean, wrap, tape, but the dog had to be sedated each time. Too much fear in too small a space. Today, something was different. Storm lay on his side in the guest room. Not asleep. Watching her. But his body was loose. Relaxed in a way she hadn't seen before. Rebecca crouched by the door. Bandage supplies in her hand. The smell of antiseptic sharp in her nostrils. Storm's tail moved, not wagging, just shifting, acknowledging. She crawled forward, slow, one knee, then the other. Her joints protested. 5 feet, 4, 3. Storm's ear flicked toward her. His breathing stayed steady. 2 feet. She reached out. Fingers touched fur. Warm, coarse. Underneath, she felt his heartbeat. Fast, too fast, but slowing. Settling. He didn't run. She changed the bandage. Hands steady. The first time they'd been steady in months. When she finished. She didn't leave. She sat beside him, back against the wall, hand resting on his side. 2 hours passed. Her legs went numb. Didn't matter. Storm fell asleep with her palm pressed against his ribs. Day 90. Storm improved. He followed her now kitchen to living room to porch. Sat at her feet while she listened to the morning farm report on the radio. Watched her with something that wasn't quite trust, but wasn't quite fear either. Shadow didn't. Shadow stayed in the guest room. The door stood open, now he could leave any time. He never did. He'd appear in the doorway sometimes, watching Storm trot past. But he wouldn't cross the threshold. Rebecca recognized that stillness. Daniel, the last 2 years, physically present at family dinners, holiday gatherings, the intervention she'd organized with military precision, his body in the chair, everything else somewhere unreachable. She'd tried everything, schedules, programs, tough love, soft love, ultimatums. Nothing worked because nothing could reach him. Dr. Hartley came for Storm's final checkup. He's bonded with you. Impressive, actually. And Shadow. Bill watched the dog through the doorway. Shadow hadn't moved in an hour. Statue still, eyes tracking everything. I don't know if Shadow can. He can. What makes you so sure? Rebecca watched Shadow's chest rise and fall. Slow. Steady. Because he still eats. Something in him wants to be alive. She paused. I just have to figure out what. Day 130. First walk attempt. Rebecca clipped a leash to Storm's collar. Standard procedure. Simple. Storm froze. Then thrashed. The metal clip against his neck chain memory. His body remembered before his brain could stop it. She dropped the leash. He bolted to the corner. Shaking. Whimpering. Rebecca stood in the middle of the room, leash coiled at her feet. Think. Next day, she drove to town, the pet store on Main Street, next to the diner where she and Harold used to get Sunday breakfast. Bought a harness, different shape, different pressure points, nothing touching his neck. Day 132. She set the harness on the floor, let Storm sniff it. Didn't put it on. Day 133. Harness on. Storm stood rigid, legs locked, but he didn't panic. Day 134. First steps, 3 of them, out the guest room door and into the hallway. Storm's legs shook like a newborn colt learning to stand. 3 steps became 10, 10 became 50. 50 became the front porch, then the yard, then the property line where the gravel met the wild grass. Day 150. Every time Rebecca took Storm outside, shadow appeared at the window, nose pressed to glass, breath fogging the surface. He watched them cross the yard, watched Storm lower his nose to grass for the first time sniffing, confused, curious, watched Storm's tail lift, not wagging yet, but not clamped between his legs either. When they came back inside, Shadow retreated to his corner, but every day, he watched. Day 175. Tires on gravel, unannounced. Catherine's rental car sat in the driveway when Rebecca came in from the yard. "Mom! Catherine!" Her daughter stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, eyes scanning the room, the feeding schedule pinned to the refrigerator, the medication chart on the counter, the notebook where Rebecca logged every meal, every behavior, every small change. "This is thorough." "Yes." Rebecca moved to the counter, poured 2 glasses of iced tea from the pitcher her mother's recipe, extra lemon, a sprig of mint from the garden, set them on the table. The glasses were cut crystal, heavy in the hand. Her mother had left them to her. Some things you don't throw away. Catherine didn't sit. "Mom?" She picked up the notebook, flipped through pages. "You've spent 6 months on 2 stray dogs." "They're not strays. Not anymore." "You didn't come to Dad's anniversary dinner. Last year, everyone flew in. Michael came from Seattle." "I was there. For 40 minutes. Then you had a headache and left." Silence. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, Storm barked at a jackrabbit. "You couldn't save Daniel." Rebecca's hands curled into fists at her sides. "You can't save these dogs instead." "I'm not trying to save them." "Then what is this?" Catherine gestured at the charts, the schedules, the obsessive documentation. "But what are you doing?" "I'm staying." "That doesn't mean anything." "It means everything." Catherine grabbed her purse. "I can't do this. Call me when you're ready to deal with something real." The front door slammed. Engine started. Gravel crunched. Gone. Rebecca stood in the kitchen, hands flat on the counter, knuckles white. She walked to the guest room, sat on the floor outside Shadow's corner. He didn't growl. First time. Day 200. 3:17 a.m. Rebecca woke, gasping. Daniel, on the bathroom floor, blue lips, cold skin. She was pumping his chest, but her hands wouldn't work right. They kept slipping, and someone was screaming, scratching at her bedroom door. She opened it. Storm, whining, pawing at the hardwood. "I'm okay." Her voice cracked. "I'm okay." Storm didn't move. Kept whining. Rebecca slid down to the floor, back against her bed, nightgown soaked with sweat. Storm lay beside her, pressed his body against hers, head on her thigh. She put her hand on his neck, felt his pulse. Steady, alive, present. They stayed there until the sun came up. Day 220. Rebecca stood in the yard, tennis ball in hand. Storm bounded back and forth, waiting. She threw it. Storm chased, retrieved, dropped it at her feet. Repeat. Movement at the window, a bark. Rebecca turned, shadow, nose against the glass, barking. Not at her, at the squirrel running across the fence behind her. Annoyed, territorial, a normal dog reaction. Rebecca laughed. The sound scraped her throat, rusty from disuse. Inside. Maggie heard it through the kitchen window. She turned away, wiped her eyes with her apron, said nothing. Day 250. Morning. Rebecca opened the front door. Storm bounded out. Grass, dirt, freedom. Shadow stood at the threshold, front paws on the doorframe, nose working the air, eyes wide. "It's okay," Rebecca said, soft. "When you're ready." Shadow looked at Storm, already halfway across the yard, rolling in a patch of clover, one paw forward, testing the porch, then another, wood beneath his feet, then concrete, then grass. He froze, looked down, looked up, looked at Rebecca. She didn't move toward him, didn't coax, just waited. Shadow took another step, then another. Storm circled back, bumped his brother's shoulder. Playful, encouraging. Shadow's tail twitched. Not a wag, not yet, but movement. Possibility. Rebecca followed behind them, far enough to give space, close enough to matter. For 30 minutes, she watched two dogs remember what it felt like to be alive. Then the phone rang, Maggie's voice, urgent. "Mrs. Sterling, turn on the TV. Channel 7, now." Rebecca walked inside, found the remote, pressed the button. A mugshot filled the screen. Travis Mendez, wanted in connection with an illegal manufacturing operation in Clark County, now faces additional charges of animal cruelty after authorities discovered evidence of systematic in the yard. Shadow's head snapped toward the window. He heard the voice coming through the screen door. He knew that voice. And everything Rebecca had built over 250 days began to collapse. 2,000 words. Day 251. Shadow bolted, not running, fleeing. Nails scrabbling on hardwood. Legs scrambling, body slamming into furniture. He crashed through the hallway, knocked over the coat rack Harold had built 30 years ago, sent a vase shattering against the wall. Rebecca ran after him. The guest room. Shadow pressed himself into the corner. Deepest corner. Back against both walls, body shaking so hard his teeth chattered. "Shadow, Shadow, it's okay." He didn't hear her. His eyes were open, but he wasn't seeing her. He was seeing something else. Someone else. Storm appeared in the doorway, whining, pacing. Rebecca reached toward Shadow. He snapped, teeth closing on air inches from her hand. She pulled back, heart pounding against her ribs. "Okay." Her voice shook. "Okay. I'm here. I'm not leaving." Shadow didn't move, didn't blink, just shook. Day 254. Dr. Hartley crouched beside Shadow. The dog didn't react, didn't growl, didn't flinch, nothing. Bill pressed his stethoscope to Shadow's chest, listened, checked his gums, his eyes. The room smelled of fear, sharp, sour, animal. "He's shutting down." Bill's voice was low, clinical, the voice he used when there was nothing good to say. "I've seen it before. The body keeps running, but something inside just stops. What can I do? Keep him hydrated, keep him warm, talk to him." He stood, knees popping. "But you need to prepare yourself." "For what?" "For the possibility that love isn't always enough." Rebecca's hands curled into fists. "No." "Rebecca, I said no." Bill held her gaze, then nodded, once. He left without another word. Day 260. 11 p.m. Rebecca sat outside Shadow's corner. The old quilt wrapped around her shoulders. The house creaked and settled the way old houses do at night. Shadow lay on his side, eyes open, staring at the wall. He'd lost weight she could count his ribs again, like the day she found him at the gate. "I had a son." Her voice sounded strange in the dark room, hollow. "Daniel." 7 pounds, 4 ounces when he was born. I held him for 2 hours before I let the nurses take him. Counted his fingers 3 times. Shadow's ear twitched. Barely. He was kind. When he was little, brought home injured birds. A baby rabbit once. Leg all torn up. He cried when it died. I told him death was natural, that we couldn't save everything. She pulled the quilt tighter. I was wrong to say that. Shadow's breathing shifted, slightly faster. When he got older, something changed. I've replayed every moment of his childhood, looking for the crack, the break, the thing I missed. Never found it. Her throat tightened. He started disappearing. Not leaving, he was right there. At Sunday dinner, at Christmas, sitting in his old room. But he wasn't. He was somewhere I couldn't reach. Shadow's head turned, slightly, toward her voice. I tried to fix him. That's what I do, I fix things. Made charts, schedules, found the best doctors. I thought if I just worked hard enough, tried hard enough. Her hands were shaking. She pressed them flat against the floor. He died thinking I saw him as a problem, a broken thing that needed repairing. Her voice cracked. He died thinking I didn't love him, that I only loved who he could be if I fixed him enough. Tears, hot on her cheeks. She didn't wipe them. I'm not going to do that to you. Shadow's eyes moved. Found hers. I'm just going to sit here, every night, until you're ready, or until you're not, but I'm not leaving. She leaned her head back against the wall. I'm sorry. Daniel. Lord. I'm so sorry. Day 270. Rebecca dragged her sleeping bag into the guest room. Spread it on the floor, 5 feet from Shadow's corner. Day 272. Shadow turned to face her, still lying down, still wary, but facing her instead of the wall. Day 276. Shadow ate 3 bites of kibble, then stopped. 3 bites more than yesterday. Day 284. Shadow walked to the guest room door, stood at the threshold, looked out into the hallway, didn't cross it, but he looked. Day 287. At 3:47 a.m. Rebecca woke to a sound. Breathing. Not hers. She opened her eyes. Shadow stood in her bedroom doorway, body rigid, legs trembling. She didn't move, didn't speak. Shadow took 1 step forward, then another. He walked to her bed, stopped, looked at her. She extended her hand, palm up, slow, the way she'd done 1,000 times over 287 days. Shadow lowered his head. His nose touched her fingers. Cold. Wet. He lay down beside her bed, not on it, not touching her, but beside her, close. She lay in the dark, listening to him breathe, listening to Storm snoring softly in the hallway, listening to the old house settle around them. Something had shifted, broken through, and in the morning, she would start writing, not because she wanted attention, not because she wanted praise, because this story, their story, deserved to be told. She didn't know yet what telling it would cost her. 800 words. Day 300. Rebecca started writing. Not a memoir, not a self-help book, just a record. What happened, what she learned, what 2 broken dogs taught a woman who'd spent her life believing she could control everything. She wrote at the kitchen table, longhand first, then typed on the old desktop computer in Harold's study. The words came slow at first, then faster. Pages piling up beside her coffee cup. Maggie read the first chapter, set it down, didn't speak for a long moment. This is good, Mrs. Sterling. It's honest. That's different. Day 310. A journalist from the Reno Gazette called Human Interest Piece. Retired surgeon finds purpose in rescued dogs. Rebecca agreed to one interview, one photographer, one afternoon. The article ran on Sunday. Front page of the Life section. By Tuesday, the Associated Press had picked it up, then the regional TV stations, then the letters started arriving. Day 320. The first letter came on a Thursday. Plain envelope, no return address, postmarked from Carson City. Nice story, but did you know Dr. Rebecca Sterling donated $50,000 to University of Nevada's biomedical research program in 2002, the same program that experimented on beagles? Ask her about that. Rebecca's hands trembled as she set it down. By Friday, 3 more letters. By Monday, a dozen. Hypocrite. She paid for torture for 20 years. Now she wants praise for saving 2 dogs. Rich woman trying to buy a clean conscience. Then the phone calls started. Reporters, animal rights groups, someone claiming to write for a magazine about medical establishment hypocrisy. Rebecca stopped answering. Day 325. Morning. Maggie met her at the door, face pale. Mrs. Sterling, there are people at the gate. Rebecca walked to the window. 8 figures. Signs, a TV camera from the local station. Sterling equals animal killer. Blood money can't buy redemption. Ask her about the beagles. Pastor Williams from First Methodist drove past, slowed down, looked at the signs, looked at the house, drove on without stopping. Day 325, 2:47 p.m. Don't go out there. Maggie stood in the doorway, arms crossed. They want a reaction. Don't give them one. Rebecca pulled on her jacket. Mrs. Sterling, they're on my property line. I have a right to know what they want. You know what they want. Rebecca walked past her. Out the door, down the gravel drive. The shouting started before she reached the gate. Mrs. Sterling, how do you respond to accusations of hypocrisy? Do you deny funding animal experimentation? How many dogs died for your research money? She stopped 10 feet from the gate. Didn't open it. Just stood on her side. A woman in the front, young, maybe 35, holding a sign with a picture of a beagle in a laboratory cage, stepped forward. 22 years. You funded animal torture for 22 years. Now you want us to call you a hero because you took in 2 strays. Rebecca's voice came out quiet. I'm not asking anyone to call me a hero. Then what are you asking for? Nothing. I'm not asking for anything. Convenient. The woman's lip curled. Got your story in the paper, your 15 minutes of fame. Bet there's a book deal coming. Must be nice to buy forgiveness. A man in the back, older, wearing a veteran's cap, shouted, My daughter worked at that research facility. She quit because of what they did to those animals, and you paid for it. I funded medical research. The protocols were reviewed by protocols? Someone laughed? Harsh. Listen to her. Protocols? Like that makes it okay? Like paperwork excuses torture? Rebecca's face burned. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm saying... Something flew through the air. She saw it too late. Instinct made her flinch. Turn her head. The egg hit her shoulder. Cold. Wet. Yolk exploding across her jacket, splattering up her neck. Into her hair. Laughter. Camera clicking. The TV crew adjusting their angle. That's what we think of your redemption. Lady, another egg. This one hit her chest, shell fragments sticking to her blouse. The smell of sulfur and raw albumin filled her nostrils. She didn't run, didn't wipe her face, just stood there. Let them see. Let them get their footage. A third egg hit her square in the face. Cold, slick, dripping into her eyes, down her chin. She blinked. Yolk blurred her vision. The world turned yellow and wet. Someone cheered. Is that all? Her voice sounded far away. Someone else's voice. The young woman lowered her sign. Something flickered across her face, discomfort, then hardened again. This isn't over. Sterling. Folks around here have long memories. Rebecca turned, walked back up the drive. Yoke dripped down her collar. Cold, sliding down her spine. Her boots crunched on gravel. Each step deliberate. Don't run. Don't give them the satisfaction. Behind her, the chanting resumed. Hypocrite, hypocrite, hypocrite. Day 325. 4:15 p.m. Bathroom. Door locked. Rebecca stood at the sink. Mirror in front of her. Egg drying in her hair. Yellow crusted on her eyelashes, her collar, the front of her blouse, bits of shell clinging to her cheek like scales. She looked old, haggard, small. The woman in the mirror wasn't Dr. Rebecca Sterling, chief of cardiothoracic surgery, wasn't the woman who'd saved hundreds of lives, who'd trained a generation of surgeons, who'd sat on boards and received plaques and shaken governors' hands. The woman in the mirror was nobody, egg-stained, humiliated, a 68-year-old fool who thought she could outrun her past by being kind to 2 dogs. She turned on the faucet, cupped water in her hands, tried to wash the yolk from her face. It stuck. Dried too fast in the desert air, she scrubbed harder, fingernails against her skin. Who do you think you are? The voice wasn't the protesters, it was hers. You couldn't save Daniel. You couldn't save Harold. You think saving 2 dogs erases 35 years of compromise of writing checks so you wouldn't have to think about where the money went. Her reflection stared back. Pathetic, yolk-streaked. A joke. They're right. They're all right. She slid down to the floor, back against the cabinet. Cold tile through her slacks, her blouse stuck to her skin wet. Stinking of egg. Just quit. Give the dogs to a rescue. Sell the ranch. Move somewhere nobody knows your name. Catherine was right. This isn't about the dogs. This was always about you. Trying to feel good. Trying to matter. Trying to prove you're not the woman who let her son die alone while you gave a speech in Boston. Her chest heaved. No tears. She was too empty for tears. The bathroom was silent except for her breathing. Get up. Clean yourself off. Call a rescue organization. End this. She didn't move. Something scratched at the bathroom door. She ignored it. More scratching. Then a whine. Low. Persistent. She looked at the crack under the door. A nose. Black. Wet. Sniffing. Storm. Behind him. Another shape. Larger. Darker. Shadow. Both of them. Outside the bathroom door. Waiting. Rebecca didn't move. The scratching stopped. The whining stopped. But they didn't leave. She could see their shadows through the crack. Just sitting there. Waiting. She reached up, unlocked the door, let it swing open. Storm pushed through immediately. Pressed his body against her side. Warm. Solid. Shadow stood in the doorway, watching. Then he stepped forward, crossed the threshold, walked to her. And for the first time in 325 days, Shadow pressed his body against her leg. Not because she called him, not because she had food, just because she was there. On the floor, broken. He chose to stay. Rebecca put one hand on Storm, one hand on Shadow, egg drying in her hair, the world outside still shouting. She bowed her head. Lord, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know if I deserve any of this, the dogs, the chance, any of it. But I'm asking, please, show me what to do next. She sat there until dark fell. Past midnight, she stood up, walked to Harold's study, sat down at the computer, opened a new document, started typing. Dear Senator Holloway, my name is Dr. Rebecca Sterling. I would like to request the opportunity to testify before the Senate Subcommittee on Animal Welfare regarding the Animal Protection Enhancement Act. I am not an expert. I am not an activist. I am someone who has made mistakes, serious ones, and who has learned things I believe are worth sharing. I understand if you decline. My past makes me a complicated witness. But if you're willing to listen, I have something to say. Her finger hovered over the send button. This will make everything worse. They'll dig deeper, find more, destroy whatever's left. She pressed send. In the guest room, Shadow lifted his head, listened, then settled back down. Whatever came next, she would face it. She just didn't know yet what facing it would cost. 700 words, day 350. Washington, D.C. The hearing room smelled of old wood and floor polish, mahogany paneling, brass nameplates, American flags standing stiff behind 7 chairs. Rebecca sat at the witness table, water glass in front of her. Untouched. Her hands rested flat on the surface surgeon's habit. Steady hands inspire confidence. They weren't steady today. Senator Patricia Holloway presided. 62 years old. Steel gray hair pulled back tight. Reading glasses perched on her nose, known for making unprepared witnesses wish they'd stayed home. Dr. Sterling, Holloway's voice cut through the murmur of the gallery. You have no background in animal welfare policy. Your professional expertise is in cardiothoracic surgery. You've spent exactly 11 months caring for 2 dogs. She removed her glasses. Why should this committee give weight to your testimony? Rebecca adjusted the microphone. Feedback whined, then settled. 35 years? Excuse me, 35 years. That's how long I spent saving human lives. I was good at it. Success rates above national average, awards on my wall. Patients flew across the country to let me operate on them. She paused. The room was silent. Somewhere, a pen scratched on paper. I couldn't save the 2 people I loved most. Murmuring in the gallery, a camera shutter clicked. My husband died of pancreatic cancer. I watched for 18 months. Held his hand at the end. Couldn't do a single thing to stop it. Her voice stayed level, clinical, the way she'd delivered hard news to families for 30 years. My son died of an overdose. I wasn't there. I was giving a speech in Boston about surgical innovation while Daniel was dying on his bathroom floor. Senator Holloway's pen stopped moving. Shadow and Storm came to me broken, burned, starved. Every expert said they couldn't recover. Too much damage, too much fear. The kindest thing would be to let them go. Rebecca looked at the senators, one by one. Meeting each gaze. I didn't let them go, and I didn't try to fix them. For the first time in my life, I just stayed. Sat on the floor outside their room, night after night, not doing anything. Just being there. Dr. Sterling. A younger senator leaned forward. What does this have to do with the proposed legislation? Everything. She took a breath. I learned that staying is harder than fixing, that presence matters more than solutions, that sometimes the only thing you can do for someone who's been hurt is not leave. As she turned back to Holloway, these laws won't eliminate cruelty. Folks who want to hurt animals will find ways. But passing this bill says something. It says we refuse to look away, refuse to pretend it's not happening. Holloway studied her. Dr. Sterling, I've read the accusations against you, the donations to animal testing programs, the questions about your past. Rebecca's stomach tightened. Here it comes. How do you respond to those who call you a hypocrite? The gallery leaned forward, cameras focused. Rebecca could lie, deflect, explain the context. Talk about how medical research worked in 2002, how the protocols were different. How she didn't understand, the accusations aren't entirely wrong. Silence, complete. 22 years ago, I donated $50,000 to a university research program. I knew they used animal testing. I told myself it was necessary, that human lives outweighed animal suffering, that the protocols were humane. She looked down at her hands, trembling now. I don't know if I believed that, or if I just didn't want to think about it. Easier to write a check and look the other way. She raised her head. I made choices I wouldn't make today. I can't undo that. Can't unwrite those checks. Can't bring back whatever animals suffered because of money with my name on it. Her voice dropped. But I can decide what I do next. Senator Holloway's expression was unreadable. I'm not asking you to call me a hero. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not even asking you to trust me. Rebecca's hands uncurled, palms flat on the table again. I'm asking you to pass a law that protects creatures who cannot protect themselves. That's not about me. Has nothing to do with me. She was done. Nothing left to say. The room hung suspended. No one moved. Holloway replaced her glasses, looked at her notes, looked back up. No further questions. The vote? Rebecca sat in the hallway, hard wooden bench, water fountain gurgling somewhere behind her. 40 minutes. The committee had been deliberating for 40 minutes. Her phone sat in her purse. She didn't look at it. Probably more letters, more accusations, footsteps. A door opening. An aide emerged. Young, nervous, clutching a clipboard. Dr. Sterling. They're ready. She followed him back into the chamber. Senator Holloway stood at the center chair. The committee has voted on whether to advance the Animal Protection Enhancement Act to the full Senate. Rebecca's heart thudded against her ribs. The vote is 7 in favor, 2 opposed. The bill advances. The gallery erupted. Applause. Shouts. Camera flashes. Rebecca didn't move. Holloway caught her eye across the room, gave the smallest nod. That was all. Day 350. Evening. Reagan National Airport, Gate B7. Flight to Reno, departing in 40 minutes. Rebecca sat by the window, watched planes taxi across the tarmac. The setting sun turned everything gold and orange. Her phone buzzed. Catherine, she answered. Mom, I saw the news. Yes? You admitted it. On national television, everything they accused you of. Yes. Long pause. Static on the line. Why? Rebecca watched a plane lift off. Wheels folding into the fuselage. Climbing. Because it was true. Another pause. Longer this time. Mom. Catherine's voice sounded different, softer, like the girl she'd been before everything went wrong. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen you do. Rebecca's throat tightened. She didn't speak. I'm flying out next week. If that's okay. It's okay. I'll see you then. Mom? The line went dead. Rebecca set down the phone. Through the window, the sky was turning purple. Another plane taking off. Another. The world kept moving. She thought about Shadow, about Storm, about the look in Shadow's eyes when he finally crossed the threshold into her bedroom. Not trust, not yet, but the willingness to try. Her flight boarded 30 minutes later. She slept the whole way home. She didn't know yet that the bill would pass the full Senate. Didn't know they would call it Shadow's Law. Didn't know her book would raise enough money to fund 3 animal rescue facilities. All she knew was that 2 dogs were waiting for her. And for the first time in 5 years, she was ready to go home. 700 words. Day 547. The president signed the bill at 2:17 p.m. Eastern Time. Rebecca watched on the small television in her kitchen. Volume low. Coffee cooling in her hands. The smell of Folgers mixing with the bacon Maggie had fried for breakfast. Official name the Animal Cruelty Prevention and Enforcement Act. The news anchor called it something else. Shadow's Law. Shadows. Day 547. Earlier that morning, the sun came up slow over the Nevada hills, gold bleeding into pink, bleeding into blue. The colors spreading across the sky the way watercolors bleed on wet paper. Rebecca stood on the porch, coffee steam rising, bare feet on cold wood. The mockingbird was already at it on the fence post. Same bird, same song. Every morning since spring. Storm was in the yard, chasing something a leaf, a grasshopper, nothing at all, just running, legs stretching, muscles working, because he could. Shadow lay in a patch of early sunlight, stretched out, belly exposed, legs splayed in 4 directions like he was trying to touch all corners of the earth at once. A year ago, he wouldn't show his belly to anyone. Vulnerability meant pain. Exposure meant attack. He'd slept curled tight, back to the wall, ready to run or fight at any sound. Now, he slept like this. Every morning, loose, open, trusting the world not to hurt him. 8:30 a.m. Maggie's truck pulled up the gravel drive. Same truck she'd been driving for 15 years. Same squeak in the left door. "Morning, Mrs. Sterling." "Maggie." Maggie climbed the porch steps, set down a basket fresh eggs from her sister's farm, a jar of strawberry preserves, a loaf of bread still warm from the oven. "You see the news, they're saying it's a landmark bill, first federal animal protection law with real teeth in 40 years. I saw." Maggie watched the dogs. Storm had found a stick somewhere and was parading it around the yard like he'd won a prize. "You did a good thing, Mrs. Sterling." Rebecca sipped her coffee. "They did. I just didn't leave." 11:15 a.m. Tires on gravel. Rebecca looked up from her book, The Old Man and the Sea again, for the dozenth time. Wasn't expecting anyone. Catherine's rental car, blue sedan, dust coating the fenders. Rebecca set down her book, stood, walked to the porch railing. Catherine got out, stood by the car, hands in her jacket pockets. Neither moved for a long moment. Then Rebecca walked down the steps, across the yard, stopped 10 feet from her daughter. "Hi, Mom." "Catherine." They stood there, awkward. Too much history between them. Too many hard words still hanging in the air. "I finished your book." Catherine's voice was quiet. "On the plane." "Oh, I didn't know. About Daniel. About how you—" She stopped, started again. "You never talked about him. I thought you just moved on. Put it in a box and kept going like you do with everything." "I didn't move on. I buried it. There's a difference. I know that now." Storm bounded over, sniffed Catherine's hand, licked her fingers. "This is Storm? Yes. He's beautiful. He knows it too." Catherine almost smiled. First time Rebecca had seen that expression on her daughter's face in years. "And Shadow." Rebecca pointed. Shadow lay in his sunbeam, watching them with one eye half open. "He doesn't come to strangers. Don't take it personal." "I won't." More silence, but different now, softer, like something had thawed between them. Catherine wiped her eyes, quick, like she didn't want Rebecca to notice. "I'm sorry, Mom, for what I said last time, about Daniel, about you not being able to save him. You weren't wrong. Maybe. But I was cruel about it." Rebecca looked at her daughter. Really looked. The lines around her eyes. The gray threading through her hair. "When had Catherine gotten old? You were honest. That's not the same as cruel." Catherine nodded, swallowed hard. "Can I stay for dinner?" The question hung between them. Rebecca's throat tightened. The word caught somewhere behind her ribs. "Yes, I'd like that. Evening." They ate on the porch, simple meal, grilled chicken with lemon and rosemary, her mother's recipe. The one Rebecca had made 100 summer evenings when the kids were small. Salad from the garden Maggie planted last spring, iced tea in the cut crystal glasses her grandmother had left her. They talked. Not about Daniel, not about Harold, not about the years of distance and missed holidays and phone calls that never said what needed saying. They talked about Catherine's children, about her job, about the trip she and Mark were planning to Italy next spring. Small things, normal things. It wasn't fixed, wasn't healed. But it was started. Catherine left after dark. Taillights disappearing down the gravel road. Rebecca stood on the porch until she couldn't see them anymore. 9:47 p.m. The house was quiet. Rebecca walked through the living room, past the bookshelf, past the photographs on the wall, Harold and her on their wedding day. Daniel, at 6 years old, holding a fishing rod. Catherine's graduation, Harold's chair, oak, worn smooth on the armrests. She'd walked around it for 5 years, treated it like a shrine, like sitting in it would mean accepting he was never coming back. She sat down. The leather creaked, molded to a different body taller, broader than hers. She leaned back, rested her arms where his arms used to rest. It didn't feel like betrayal, just a chair, just a place to sit. Shadow walked over, slow, deliberate. Stopped beside her. Rested his head on her knee. Storm curled up at her feet. Sighed. Settled. Outside, the desert was quiet. Stars coming out one by one. The Milky Way stretching across the black like someone had spilled salt across a dark table. Rebecca closed her eyes. She thought about Daniel. Not the ending. Not the phone call. Not the funeral where she couldn't cry because crying meant it was real. She thought about him at 5 years old, running through the sprinkler in their old backyard, laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. Water droplets catching the afternoon light. His face turned up to the sky, whole, happy. Hers, I couldn't save you. Daniel. I know that now. I spent so long trying to fix everything, control everything. I thought if I just worked hard enough, I could keep everyone I loved alive. I was wrong, but these two shadows' tail thumped against the floor. Once, twice. They didn't need saving. They didn't need fixing. They needed someone to stay. So I stayed. Storm shifted at her feet, pressed his warm body against her ankle. And somehow they saved me. Rebecca opened her eyes. The silence didn't feel empty anymore. It didn't feel like something missing, something lost, something waiting to be filled. It felt like peace. She bowed her head. Thank you, Lord, for the second chance, for the staying, for all of it. Shadow's tail thumped again. Rebecca smiled. For the first time in 5 years. She was home. The end. 950 words. You know why I shared this story with you. Not because Rebecca was perfect. She wasn't. She made mistakes she couldn't take back, wrote checks she wished she hadn't, failed the people she loved most. But she stayed. That's the part that matters, friend. When everything told her to walk away, the shame, the accusations, the voice in her own head, she stayed. Maybe you're sitting somewhere quiet right now. Maybe the house feels too empty. Maybe you've been walking around somebody's chair for longer than you care to count. I'm not here to preach at you. I'm just asking, what if you stayed for something? For someone? For yourself? Shadow and Storm didn't need a hero. They needed presence. Maybe that's what we all need. Someone who stays. Disclaimer. This story is inspired by countless real accounts of animal rescue and human redemption, created solely for entertainment purposes. The narrative does not condone, encourage, or promote any form of violence, animal cruelty, or harmful behavior toward any living being. All characters, names, locations, and events depicted herein are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or deceased, or actual events is purely coincidental and entirely unintentional. 200 words.